It was the kind of day that was supposed to be perfect. The kind of day that families remember for generations. A story retold in photo albums, in grainy videos, in the glow of candlelit dinners. My sister, Clara, was getting married, and our entire family had been buzzing with excitement for months. I stood near the back of the church, my tie just a little too tight, my palms damp with a nervous sweat I couldn't explain. I wasn't the one getting married, yet the air itself seemed heavy, almost electric, as though the universe knew something we didn't. The church was breathtaking. Tall stained glass windows painting the aisle with fragments of red and blue light. Polished wooden pews creaking under the weight of family members, neighbors, and distant relatives we hadn't seen in years. The scent of fresh lilies filled the air, mixed with the waxy warmth of dozens of candles flickering at the altar. Clara was radiant. When she finally appeared, arm in arm with our father, a hush fell over the congregation. Her dress was ivory silk, simple but elegant, catching the light in ways that made her look almost unreal. Her smile, wide, trembling, but brave, was a smile I thought I'd never forget. And then, the ceremony began. The pastor spoke in his slow, practiced rhythm, his words filling the silence between us all. Clara's fiancé, Daniel, stood tall at the altar, his hands clasped, his expression unreadable. I had never fully trusted Daniel. There was something about him, too polished, too charming, as though he had practiced being perfect. But Clara loved him, and so I had kept my doubts to myself. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Too perfect. Then came the vows. Clara's voice shook as she spoke hers, but every word was heartfelt. She promised to love him, to trust him, to stand by him in sickness and in health. Her eyes glistened with tears, and the congregation sighed in unison, touched by the purity of the moment. But when it was Daniel's turn, something shifted. He cleared his throat, glanced toward the crowd, and hesitated just a second too long. My stomach knotted. He began his vows, smooth, steady, but halfway through, as he spoke the words, honesty, and truth, I noticed Clara's expression flicker. It was the smallest thing, a twitch of her mouth, the faintest shadow in her eyes. And then, as if the universe couldn't bear to let the lie live, the silence was broken. "Stop!" The voice came from the back of the church, sharp, desperate, trembling with rage. Every head turned. My blood ran cold when I saw who it was. An older woman, dressed in black though this was no funeral, stood clutching the pew. Her hands trembled as she pointed at Daniel. "You can't marry her," she cried, her voice echoing against the walls. "Not after what you've done." Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Clara froze, her bouquet shaking in her hands. Daniel's face drained of color. The pastor stammered, unsure whether to continue or intervene. I felt my legs move before my brain caught up. I stepped into the aisle, closer to Clara, closer to Daniel, closer to the storm unraveling in front of us. The woman in black took a shuddering breath. "Tell her," she said, her voice cracking. "Tell her the truth before I do." Daniel shook his head slowly, his lips parting but no words escaping. Clara turned to him, her eyes wide, searching his face for an answer. "What truth?" she whispered. And in that moment, I knew the perfect day was over. The cracks in our family's picture-perfect world had been struck, and what lay underneath would tear us all apart. The church had erupted into chaos. Some people whispered frantically, others sat in stunned silence. The woman in black, a stranger to me, but clearly not a stranger to Daniel, stood trembling, her face pale, but her eyes burning with fury. Clara clutched at Daniel's arm. "What is she talking about? Daniel, what is she saying?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stared at the ground as though it would swallow him whole. Finally, the woman stepped forward, her voice low but sharp. "He's lying to you." He's been lying to all of you. This marriage, this entire ceremony, it's built on secrets." The words struck like thunder. My father's face flushed with anger. My mother's hands tightened around her purse. I could feel my own pulse hammering in my temples. "Who are you?" Clara demanded, her voice breaking. The woman's gaze softened for a moment as she looked at my sister. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry years of pain, she said the words that froze the air in my lungs. "I'm his mother." The church fell silent. I glanced at Daniel. His face was ashen, his jaw tight. But it wasn't just the revelation that stunned me. It was the fact that Daniel had told us his mother had died years ago. And if she was alive, what else had he lied about? The silence that followed her words was deafening. For a moment, even the candles seemed to flicker lower, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Clara's lips parted, trembling, her bouquet slipping slightly from her hands. "Your mother?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't move, didn't speak. It was as if someone had carved him out of stone. "Yes," the woman said, her voice breaking. "I'm his mother. The mother he told you is dead. The mother he's been hiding for years." A wave of shock rippled through the guests. Heads turned, people muttered, and I could feel the unease rising like a tide. I caught my father's eye across the aisle. His face had turned crimson, his fists clenched in disbelief. Clara stumbled a step back, her dress whispering against the floor. "But he told me," her voice cracked. "Why would you lie about that, Daniel? Why would you lie about your own family?" Daniel's lips finally moved, but his voice was hoarse, quiet. "Clara, I can explain." The woman in black cut him off, her eyes burning with fury and something else, sorrow. "Explain? You've had years to explain. And instead, you built a life on lies. You let this poor girl believe she was marrying an honest man, when all you've done is cover up the truth." Clara's bouquet slipped entirely from her hands now, landing softly against the polished wood floor. I could see her shaking, her knuckles white as she clutched at the edge of her veil. "What truth? Someone tell me what truth?" No one answered right away. The church was suffocating with silence. Finally, Daniel exhaled, a sound closer to a groan than a sigh. He lifted his head, but his eyes refused to meet Clara's. "I didn't tell you," he said, his voice trembling, "because I thought it was the only way to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Clara demanded, her voice rising with hysteria. The woman stepped closer, her heels clicking against the stone floor. Her presence was heavy, commanding, though her body shook with emotion. "From the life he came from," she said coldly. "From the things he's done. From the people he was raised by. Protect you from me." A collective gasp tore through the crowd. My mother pressed a hand to her mouth. My father swore under his breath. Clara blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about? This doesn't make sense." Daniel finally looked at her, his eyes wet, his mask slipping away. "She's telling the truth. I told you my mother was dead because in my heart, she already was. She wasn't someone I could bring into my new life. Not someone I could let you meet. My family, my childhood, they were nothing I wanted you to see." The woman's eyes flashed with hurt, though her voice remained firm. "Say it, Daniel. Say what you're too much of a coward to admit. Tell her what you really are." Daniel's face crumpled. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Clara shook her head violently. "No, I don't understand. Someone just tell me what's happening." And then the woman said it. "He's a criminal." The words struck like thunder, echoing across the church walls. Clara staggered back, as though she'd been physically struck. "What?" "His father was one," the woman continued, her voice sharp as a blade. "And he followed in his footsteps. theft, lies, fraud. He built himself up by climbing over other people. He changed his name, buried his past, and made sure none of you would ever know who he really was. I felt the blood drain from my face. I turned to Daniel, praying, hoping that she was lying, that this was some mistake, some cruel attempt to sabotage the wedding. But Daniel didn't deny it. He stood frozen, his silence damning him more than any words ever could. "No!" Clara's voice was barely a whisper, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Daniel, tell me she's lying." Daniel finally lifted his eyes to hers, and for a moment, he looked like a child, lost, broken, terrified. "I wanted to leave it all behind," he said quietly. "I wanted to be someone new, someone better. When I met you, Clara, I thought maybe I could bury the past forever. I thought if I never spoke of it, if I pretended hard enough, it would disappear." Clara's tears blurred her vision, her hands clutching at her dress as though it were the only thing keeping her standing. "And what about us?" she asked through sobs. "Our future? Was that just another lie too?" "No," Daniel cried, stepping forward, but she recoiled from him. His voice broke. "No, Clara, you're the only real thing I've ever had. Everything else, yes, I lied, I hid things, but with you, I was honest in the only way I knew how. I love you. Please believe me." But Clara was shaking her head, her sobs echoing in the stillness of the church. "You don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied every single day we were together. You wouldn't have let me stand here in front of everyone ready to marry a stranger." The weight of her words hung in the air. Daniel's shoulders collapsed, as though every muscle in his body had given out. He lowered his head, unable to look at her, unable to face the family, the guests, the truth. The woman, his mother, stood silently, tears slipping down her face now. "I didn't come here to destroy you, Clara," she said softly. "I came here because you deserve to know who he really is before you tie your life to his forever." The church felt colder now. The candles flickered, the guests whispered nervously, unsure whether to stay or to flee. My father stood tall, stepping forward, his face like stone. "This wedding is over," he said firmly, his voice carrying finality. Clara's sobs grew quieter, but her body trembled. She turned, slowly, her veil slipping as she walked away from the altar. Each step echoed, heavy and final, until the church doors swung open and sunlight poured across her figure. And then she was gone. Daniel didn't follow. He just stood there, broken, watching everything he had built crumble into dust. But as I looked at him, and at the woman in black, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of it. That whatever truth had been revealed today was only a fragment of something darker, something far more destructive, lurking just beyond the surface. And I was right. The church emptied slowly, uneasily, as if people feared that by leaving too quickly they might miss another revelation. The whispers followed us into the street, the echo of scandal carried in hushed tones. Clara was nowhere to be seen. She had vanished into the sunlight, swallowed whole by her heartbreak. Daniel remained inside, a shadow among shadows, his figure hunched on the steps of the altar where moments ago he had stood as a groom. His mother lingered near him, silent now, her anger drained, replaced by something heavier, pity or regret. I wanted to go to him, to demand the truth for myself, but something in his expression warned me away. His eyes weren't just sad, they were haunted. That night, our house was thick with tension. My father paced the floor like a caged lion, muttering curses under his breath. My mother sat quietly, her rosary clutched in her trembling hands, her lips moving in desperate prayer. Finally, my father broke the silence. "He's not setting foot in this family again," he spat. "Not after this. Clara deserves better. We all do." I wanted to agree. I wanted to condemn Daniel, to close the door and never think of him again. But a small part of me, the same part that had grown up with him, that remembered his laughter and his kindness, couldn't let go so easily. The following morning, I found him sitting alone by the river. His suit was still wrinkled from the night before, his hair disheveled, his face gaunt with sleeplessness. He didn't look at me when I approached. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Neither should you," I answered. For a long time, we sat in silence, the water rushing past us, carrying with it the weight of words left unsaid. Finally, I broke it. "Is it true? All of it?" Daniel closed his eyes. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Yes. And no." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He took a deep breath, his hands gripping his knees so tightly his knuckles whitened. "My mother told you pieces of the truth, but not all of it. She wanted you to see me as a monster. And maybe I am. But she left out the reasons." I waited. "My father, he was involved in things. Dangerous things. I grew up in a house where lies were currency and violence was a language. I swore I'd never be like him, but when you're raised in the shadows, sometimes you can't escape them. I did things I'm not proud of. Things I thought were necessary at the time." His voice faltered. "When I met Clara, I wanted to bury it all. I thought love could erase the past. But it doesn't work that way." His words hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting. I wanted to hate him, but I also wanted to understand. "Why didn't you tell her? Why didn't you tell any of us?" He turned to me then, his eyes red-rimmed, filled with anguish. "Because if I told you, you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now." The silence between us stretched. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps broke it. I turned, and there she was, his mother. She looked older in the daylight, her face lined not only with age, but with years of grief. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel said coldly. She ignored him, her gaze fixed on me. "You want to know the truth? Then listen. He isn't telling you everything." Daniel stood abruptly. "Stop it. Haven't you done enough?" But she pressed on, her voice rising with desperation. "Your father didn't just steal, Daniel. He killed. And you," her voice cracked. "You helped him." The words crashed into me like a storm. I staggered back, unable to process what I had just heard. "My brother. A killer?" "No." Daniel's shout echoed across the river. His face twisted with anguish. "I didn't kill anyone. I tried to stop him. You know that?" His mother's eyes filled with tears. "You were there, Daniel. You were part of it. And running from it doesn't change the truth." My breath came in shallow gasps. I wanted to scream, to demand clarity, but the look in Daniel's eyes silenced me. Pain, shame, fury, all tangled together. Finally, he whispered, "Believe what you want. Everyone else already has." Then he turned and walked away, his figure fading down the path until he was swallowed by the trees. His mother's shoulders slumped. She sank onto the grass, burying her face in her hands. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to decide who to believe. Days passed. Clara left town, her ring abandoned on the nightstand, her dreams scattered like ashes. The guests whispered about the wedding that had turned into a nightmare, the family torn apart by secrets. And Daniel? He disappeared. No one knew where he went. My father forbade us from looking for him, but I couldn't obey. One evening, weeks later, I received a letter. No return address, no name, just my own scrawled across the envelope. Inside was a single page, Daniel's handwriting unmistakable. "I don't know if I'll ever see you again. I don't know if I deserve to. But I need you to understand. I never wanted to become what they said I am. I tried to protect you, to protect Clara, by hiding the past. I failed. If you remember me not as the man who lied, but as the brother who tried. The paper shook in my hands as I read it over and over, searching for hidden meanings, for clues of where he had gone. But there was nothing. Only the weight of finality. Months turned into years. Clara rebuilt her life elsewhere, though I heard she never remarried. My parents grew older, their bitterness calcified into silence. And Daniel became a ghost, a name we didn't speak, a wound we didn't touch. Yet sometimes, late at night, I hear the river in my dreams. I see him sitting there, shoulders hunched, eyes haunted. And I wonder, was he running from justice or from himself? I'll never know the full truth. Perhaps no one will. But one thing is certain, that day in the church, when a wedding turned into a reckoning, changed us all forever. Because sometimes, the past doesn't just haunt you. It destroys you.